everyone, this is Allie at Turnip Green Creative Reuse. I'm here today to do some reuse printmaking with you. So we're going to learn how to make prints out of materials that you would have at home. I am going to show you how to experiment with printmaking a little bit to start, and then we will jump into a project where we're going to make a reuse printed bag for our Halloween treats. I'm here with Turnip Green Creative Reuse. Turnip Green Creative Reuse is a nonprofit organization with the mission of fostering creativity and sustainability through reuse. So what we do is we collect materials that people no longer want and they would otherwise send to the landfill, and we divert those materials from the landfill by getting them to teachers and artists and students who can be creative with them and give those materials a new life. So today we're going to use all materials from my home that otherwise may end up in the landfill. Like I said, we're going to be doing reuse printmaking today. So I have a few examples that I did this morning. This is one of a flower that I'm going to work off of that I really liked doing. And then this is one I did with my niece who's 5. And she used down here, you can maybe tell she used a fork to create grass. And then she used a sponge to create the wings of this butterfly. She used an acorn for the dots on the butterfly. She used a pencil here, and then she just used a paintbrush for the sky. So we're gonna do some reuse printmaking, and you can make whatever designs you want out of the different shapes. I'm gonna start off by showing you some of the materials that we're gonna use today. So first of all, I have a plate, and I'm just gonna put my paint on this. Today I'm going to use washable poster paint. It's really important, especially if you're somebody who gets a little messy like me, to use washable paint for printmaking and stamping because you will get a little messy. So I have some paint and my plate. For the trick-or-treat bag, I'm going to just use a big manila folder. So I'm going to use that to print on there. I have a paintbrush. This paintbrush will help us apply the paint more evenly to the surface of the stamp. I have some fabric that I'm just going to practice printing on and test it out and see how it goes. And then I have things I'm going to be using as stamps. So I went around my house and I found some. Here are some that we found in our toy box. So this is pretend lettuce. These are little boots from a doll that I rewashed, and we're going to use them again for a stamp. I'm going to use a pencil for a stamp. I'm going to use an acorn I found in my yard. I'm going to use a leaf, which I pulled off of a plant in my house. And I have a monkey, which is from a barrel of monkeys that I'm going to use. And then lastly, I have this styrofoam. And this is really great. It's the bendy styrofoam, and you can squeeze it. It's more like a sponge. So I'm going to cut this, and I can put it in any shape that I want. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to bend this down so you can see my workstation. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to pour out my paint. I'm going to be using just green and blue today. Those are the colors that I have, so I'm just going to make them work with what I have. You really don't need a lot, so I wouldn't start with too much. So just a little dot of both. And then I'm going to do experimentation first. So I'm going to take one of these pages that I did, and I'm just going to experiment on the back to see how it goes. So first I want to do a boot, which you can see here. I'm going to stick it in, and if you get it really, a lot of paint, it's not going to work as well. So what I'm going to do is I'll take my brush, and I'm just going to brush it. So it's a thin, even layer, like that. And then I'm going to stick it down nice and firmly one time. Don't move it too much. And take it off. That did a little bit of a footstep. You can keep doing it a few times and see what you get. And you'll get different things depending on how much paint is on the boot. So you can try it a few different ways and see what you like. I'm going to try some of the natural elements now, because those are the ones that I really like. So I'm going to try this leaf. So again, you want to do just a thin layer. Something you can do is take the paintbrush, like this, put a little paint on, and you can just paint on top of the stamp that you're using. And this is where it gets a little messy, so make sure that you're painting onto a plate or a piece of paper. So now I have a very thin layer of paint, and I'm just gonna place it and push it down evenly and firmly one time. And then I'm gonna pull it up. And that one worked out really well. So if it's flat and thin and the paint is even, it works really well. I'm gonna experiment with a few more of these objects. That makes a perfect line. I'm gonna try the acorn now. It's kind of round on here, and when it's round, if it's not flat, it won't make a great shape. So I'm gonna use the flat side. I'm gonna use my blue paint instead this time. If your paint gets mixed up, don't worry about it. You can always mix your paints, decide what colors you like. The acorn just makes a nice little dot. And that's pretty much it. Last thing I'm going to print is this lettuce. This, as you can see, it has a lot of nooks and crannies. So when I paint it, I'm just going to make sure that I'm getting in all of those little pieces. So that way when I use it as a print, it comes out evenly. Again, you don't need very much paint. If you put a lot of paint on, it will just come out like a big blob. You won't have very much detail to your print. That's the number one mistake that I see a lot of people make. It's not necessarily a mistake, just something to learn, that if you want it to have a lot of detail, you really don't need very much paint at all. Okay, so I've painted an even layer. I'm going to stamp it. I'm going to push it down evenly. That actually came out, it made like little lines. It didn't get a lot of it. So I'm going to try it again and see what happens. Pretty much the same thing, just a lot of lines. Okay, now that I've experimented, I've tested out my paints a little, I've seen what I can do, I'm going to start on my main version for my trick-or-treat bag because I think I'm ready for that. So when you start on your final version, what you want to do first is kind of think, what do you want on it? Do you want a nature scene? Do you want a person? What do you want? For Halloween, I'm going to do a pumpkin. That makes sense to me. So I'm going to look at all of my materials and think, what can I use to make a pumpkin? So out of my materials here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this leaf to kind of layer a few different leaves to make it form into a pumpkin. And then I also cut some of that foam, and I can just use this to fill in if I need. So I'm going to get started on that. All right, and I am done. So This is my final version. I used a leaf and I restamped a bunch of times to make the pumpkin shape, and then I used a pencil to do the stem and the mouth, and then I used my acorn to do the eyes. And I'm just going to let that dry, and that's going to be my reuse stamped Halloween kit. I hope you have a lot of fun making yours, and I can't wait to see what you all make. Please share with us and tag Turnip Green Creative Reuse so we can see all of your Halloween designs. Thanks so much and have a great day.